Thank you. I've got a lapel mic on. Are we on?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. Are we going? Oh, I feel like I can go hands-free. This is great. I love it. I love the fact that you got Lottie in that prayer. Thank you. Lottie's my 10-month-old golden retriever, and she is my whole life. So well done for getting that into the prayer. So good morning, everyone. My name is Viki. I've been a part of this church for also other things are part of my life as well, but the dog. My name's Viki, and I've been a part of this church for about just over 5 years now. So I think I know most of you, but there's some faces that I don't know. So hello, nice to meet you. Mike asked me this morning to speak on community, and I will do that. I have prepared. I will be faithful to what he's asked me to do. However, I don't really feel that I need to, because of all the testimonies this morning have just showed you guys the importance and the value of community already. So thank you to everyone who shared that. That's given me a great place to start from. And I just kind of want to preface what I'm going to say this morning as well. If you're here for the first time, whether you're trying out this church as a place to call home, or you're just trying church in general, exploring this whole faith thing, a special welcome to you. I really hope that you can take something of what I'm saying, but I have also written this and prepared this with this community in mind, so I hope that you can find community out of what I'm saying. If it's this community, you are super welcome. If it's another community, that's absolutely fine, we cheer you on. So just wanted to start with that. Now, I'm going to talk about something that I'm actually not very experienced in this morning, which is cars. So this last month, Brett and I were considering buying a second car. Now, I have recently changed jobs, and I have different working hours and no longer working from home, which means that we wondered if sharing our trusty Hyundai i30 estate was still going to be practical for our lives. So we embarked on the very stressful journey of scrolling through Auto Trader. And I have to be honest, I'm rubbish with cars. At least I used to be rubbish at cars. Starting the search with possibly thousands and thousands of vehicles, I wondered, what on earth am I actually looking out for when it comes to the car search? And I'm very thankful that I do have a husband and a father-in-law who are a little bit more clued up on cars than I am. But nevertheless, the whole process was very overwhelming. Now, after a lot of research, mainly from Brett, we decided that a Nissan Qashqai might be a good option for us. They seemed to have good miles per gallon, they seemed pretty cost effective, and they could fit our 30-kilogram golden retriever in the back. So we consulted Google and Brett's dad about all of the possible things to look out for and what could go wrong with a Nissan Qashqai when we went to do some test drives. Now, I have learned things and terminology that I have never heard of before, and this is going to make me sound so basic, but here we are. Timing belts, diesel particulate filters, all of the risk factors that could ruin a diesel particulate filter. I've learned all of that. The list goes on. I'm not really sure that I'm ready for a job at Wex Mechanics yet, but I was determined to learn a little bit more about all of the possible warning signals that may or may not show on a test drive. So finally the day came. Brett had found what looked like a great deal on Auto Trader, so off we drove to Mexborough to test drive a little 2009 Nissan Qashqai. And as we pulled into this estate of new build houses, we noticed the car parked on someone's driveway. It had a dark grey exterior, a sunroof, and could definitely fit our almost 30 kilograms golden retriever. And as we got in for a test drive, we quickly learned that it had heated seats too. Great, I thought. As we carefully start to drive out of this little new build cul-de-sac, and I made conversation with the owner asking about his job and his life, Brett, who was driving, started to notice that there were some warning signals in the car. Our Brett's extensive research of a Nissan Qashqai taught us that if and I may be wrong here, so please don't tell me I'm wrong about this, I don't know anything about cars, but anyway, that if a diesel particulate filter is faulty, it will struggle to accelerate up a hill. As he floored the gas on the Qashqai, it struggled to take us up what was really a tiny hill compared to some of the ones in Sheffield. A real problem for us and a big warning signal. After we parked the car back on the driveway, we asked about the timing belt. Another learning point from the School of Auto Trader was that timing belts need to be changed around every 4 years-ish, depending on your mileage. It quickly became clear to us that the timing belt did need replacing, something that the owner was reluctant to tell us and had no desire to help with or lower the price. Another warning signal. Unsure of whether to go ahead and make the purchase, Brett called his dad for some advice. The final warning signal came when he was on the phone and I was chatting to the owner. As I told him who he was talking to and that he was seeking for some wisdom, he impolitely advised me that asking for too many opinions is not helpful. While there is some truth in this, I politely told him that not asking for wisdom isn't very helpful either. It's safe to say that we did not buy the car and have since stopped our search for now. So why am I telling you the story about our search for a Nissan Qashqai? The answer, surprisingly, lies in the book of Hebrews in the Bible. I think I've got the verse, should have the verses behind me. Now, to give a bit of context, Hebrews is a book in the Bible that is a bit of an uncomfortable read at times. The writer, unlike some other writers in the Bible, isn't writing a story or an account like the Gospels, nor is it a book of poetry like the Psalms. Instead, it's a book that's filled with a lot of warnings, specifically warning the reader against turning away from Jesus. And it exists to challenge and encourage the reader to pursue relationship with Jesus and do that in community with other Christians. Much like Auto Trader for cars, it includes a list of warning lights to look out for in terms of a Christian's faith in Jesus. And over the next few minutes, I'm just going to share my take on these verses and how these words are so powerful and relatable to where we're at as a church right now. So I've got these words from Hebrews in the Passion Translation, just because I like how poetic it is. So it says, discover creative ways to encourage others and motivate them towards acts of compassion, doing beautiful works as expressions of love. This is not the time to pull away and neglect meeting together, as some have formed the habit of doing. In fact, we should come together even more frequently, eager to encourage and urge each other onwards as we anticipate that day dawning. Now, COVID presented us with the perfect opportunity to stop meeting together as a church, both this church and the worldwide church. And what started as a really good intention to protect the most vulnerable people, for some, not all, became an opportunity to pull away altogether, as it says in these verses. And I think it's fair to say that while there was a lot of excitement and some apprehension when we did start meeting together again, there's also a sadness to see that many of the people we regularly connected with were no longer joining in with church, and they fell out of community. Now, I want to be really clear. A decision to pull away from church or to not attend does not equate to someone not having a faith in Jesus anymore. I know plenty of people who have faith in Jesus and are not a part of a regular community. I also know plenty of people who are a part of a regular church community and do not have personal faith in Jesus. Both groups of people are totally welcome, totally accepted, and totally loved. But I do also think that the Hebrews writer has a good point and highlights some important warning signals. Regularly meeting together, and we've heard this from the stories this morning, is an absolutely crucial, not just for the survival, but for the growth of our faith in Jesus. COVID times stopped this a little bit, but we are in a post-COVID era, and meeting together feels like more of a privilege than before. A few months back, I was in conversation with some friends about following Jesus. These friends are in their 50s, and they have 4 grown-up kids. Both them two and all of their children love Jesus. They had told me that they'd recently met up with some friends from university, which was almost 30 years ago. And these friends were friends that they were in small groups with, that they worshipped with, they prayed with. And they told me now that over half of those friends weren't following Jesus anymore, and that broke their hearts. I asked what their reason for not following Jesus was. And there seemed to be a common thread throughout each person's story. And it was really simple. They just stopped meeting. This is why I believe the writer of Hebrews speaks so strongly on this. The regular act of stopping meeting together can lead to the decision to walk away from Jesus altogether, and it's a warning signal that is really, really easy to ignore. I've recently changed jobs and I now work in the wedding industry, which is a lot of fun. And I have the privilege of being one of the last people to speak to the bride before she walks down the aisle. I did this on Friday at a wedding, and it is so exciting to see their face all nervous, but also so exciting knowing their future husband is just the other side of the door. And I often hear the words that a parent whispers to their daughter as they're about to walk down the aisle. They're usually words of love and advice. Sometimes I like to crack a little joke to lighten the mood. But something I have never, ever, ever heard is the mention of divorce. Because as a bride walks towards her groom, divorce is never on the mind. It is never the desired outcome, because healthy marriages don't begin with the intention of divorcing one day. They begin with the intention to choose each other every day in big and small ways. In a similar way, faith in Jesus involves regular, big and small choices to pursue him. No one on their baptism day expects to walk away from Jesus one day, but we do know that sometimes this is how the story pans out. So when my friends told me about what happened to their friend's faith, there was just one question on my mind. How do I make sure that at 26 years old, that doesn't happen to me? Their response was to continue committing to community. When church feels hard, when people offend you, and they will, when expectations aren't met, keep showing up, keep being present, keep encouraging. These verses in Hebrews highlight the importance of this. Discover creative ways to encourage others and to motivate them towards acts of compassion, doing beautiful works as expressions of love. I love this translation of the Bible because it appeals to the creative part to me. Discover creative ways to encourage others. Encouraging others is fun. It can be thinking out of the box. It can be simple. It can be complex. It can be an encouragement to you too. Encouragement leads others to show compassion and to reflect Jesus, and we have the ability to draw that out of people. In Romans, I think I have these verses as well. There's some verses that say, I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. That is, that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. My best friend is here today visiting from Hastings, so I didn't say I was going to point you out, but hey. And we've been texting all week about her coming up to Sheffield. She knows and loves Jesus. We've been best friends for 8.5 years. And in not one of those texts have I said, I long to see you so that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. But that is essentially the expectation of a Christian friendship. There is an expectation that you will be encouraged and be an encouragement to that person, whether that's in a small group or going to York and having drinks over lunch. There is a mutual encouragement. There will be seasons where you need more encouragement, and other seasons where encouraging becomes really easy. But it's a two-way street, and that's what community looks like. Back to Hebrews, it says, this is not the time to pull away and neglect meeting together, as some have formed the habit of doing. In fact, we should come together even more frequently. All these verses are asking us to do is show up consistently. Show up to small groups, show up to church, show up for your neighbours. There is always a reason to stop meeting. This is what I've discovered. If we're looking for a reason to stop meeting, there will always be one. Some of those reasons are valid. This week, I had to say no to going to small group. Very challenged by Sarah, wherever you are, turning up to small group. But I had to say no because changing jobs means that I've got less energy. And for this week, that was a good decision. But it's so easy to get into the habit of doing that by accident. Back to my driving analogy. My apologies to anyone who actually does know about cars. You can tell me about it later. It is so easy for us to ignore warning lights or just simply not see them at all. I'm sure most of us have done it. We've ignored some kind of warning in a car, whether it's an actual light popping up on the dashboard or a sound that doesn't sound right, and you kind of just hope that it goes away. Fixing a problem can be costly, it can be time-consuming, and it can even open up the doors to more problems that you didn't even know were there. But eventually, if we ignore the warnings long enough, the car breaks down and it loses movement altogether. But you know what might actually push us to act? If a passenger who was sitting next to us reminded us to get the problem fixed. A passenger riding next to us can see the warning lights and prompt us to sort the problem out because they have a front row seat on the journey and they were able to point out the warning lights that we may have been ignoring. We have to continue to allow others to ride in the front seat of our lives, next to us with full view of all the warning lights. Otherwise, we can quite easily coast along in our faith, ignoring all the warning signals, flashing before us, heading towards a breakdown. Giving people a front row seat in our lives can be scary. It can also be really difficult. Making and sustaining friendships as an adult is a real challenge, especially when everyone seems to have found their people. Finding yours can feel really lonely at times. But here's the secret. Not one person is exempt from that feeling. And there is no shame in feeling a little bit like a kid in a playground wondering who wants to hang out with you. If you're here this morning wondering who your community actually is, who wants to be in the front seat with you, and feeling silly for not knowing the answer, I want to leave you with one of two things. Firstly, as human beings, we are literally created for community. We are told in the book of Genesis that it is not good for man and woman to be alone. But in a culture where independence is valued higher than community, it's easy to feel shameful and embarrassed for the desire to find friends who you can be real friends with. Being in a community and meeting together regularly and being honest is absolutely essential to our faith, and the enemy knows this. So he subtly plants seeds of shame when we take a step towards what we were created for. He makes us feel stupid for wanting deeper community and gives way for the warning lights to be ignored. On the flip side, Jesus empowers individuals when we gather together. In Matthew it says, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them." Of course the enemy wants us isolated. He knows that when we gather in Jesus' name, Jesus is there, and when Jesus is there, all heaven breaks loose. When Jesus is there, the warning lights don't need to be feared. They can be faced with faith. Because even if fixing the problem is costly, takes more time than we'd hoped it to, or even reveals more problems, we can be confident because we know who's with us, and we know our community are riding in the passenger seat. As Mike said, getting connected into a small group or a community hasn't always felt easy in recent years. So if you're not in one and you want to be in one, please do talk to Mike. And if you next week still haven't spoken to him and feel a bit like, oh, I'm not sure whether I should, don't listen to that doubt. Make sure that you take that step of faith. I'm going to invite the band to come up because we're just going to do something reflective in a minute. But the second thing I want to leave you with is this. If you are in a group of people where you've found your community and you know who your people are, please, please, please be generous and inviting people in. Communities are not cliques. They exist for both the people inside of them and outside of them. They become the natural place to invite friends and neighbours and colleagues to experience a bit more of Jesus. And I'm so thankful that during a time where Brett and I weren't sure who our community was anymore, Mike and Pippa invited us to be in theirs. Now I know for Mike and Pip that wasn't the easiest time in their life. It's not like they had loads of room for people in their lives or loads of things sorted out, but they still invited us in. We meet in homes, we meet in church, we go out for coffee and take the dogs out for walks. We serve together and have fun together. and we get to know Jesus better together. Our not-so-little small group has grown in both number and diversity of people, and we are much better for it. We have new friends that are in completely different seasons of life to us, both older and younger. We have people who are Sheffield locals who have been here forever, or we have people from Hong Kong and Iran who get to invite us into a bit of their culture. We've been encouraged, and we hope we have been an encouragement. And we have been challenged, and we have done the challenging. And we have grown immensely and blessed beyond all measure. But we've really only done one thing. We've just shown up. And it really is that simple. Our small group, or our household, our community, whatever you want to call it, have seen the warning lights and responded with gentle nudges, encouragement and faith when it's been much easier to ignore them altogether. So I'm going to leave you with 2 questions, and I'm going to ask the band to play just for a couple of minutes, just as we reflect. You can reflect by yourself, or in Heart of Community, you can chat to the people around you. But the 2 questions are, what warning lights, if any, are you ignoring at the moment? And number 2, what are your next steps in ensuring that you have passengers next to you on the journey? So I'm just going to leave it there, and then Mike will wrap up.